So here we have a crazy looking graph. It kind of looks like maybe the letter N if you were writing the letter N and you were in kindergarten. There we go. So here's the graph of g of x. And what we're going to do is we're going to sketch the image of the graph after each of these things. And we're going to color code them. We're going to do the first one here in green and see what that looks like. And then afterwards it says state the domain and range of each function. And we're going to write the equation. Okay? There's some terminology here. I'm going to double underline this second part. We're going to write the equation in terms of the function g. So we're going to see what that means. Because right now when I said that, you'll probably go, what? Graphing, it's not bad. Translating it 4 units to the left, here we're at -1. If I went 4 units to the left, this point would go there. Second point, if I counted 4 to the left, would go there. 1, 2, 3, 4 would go there. 1, 2, 3, 4 would go there. And then you could play connect the dots. Who thought math could be this much fun? There we go. So all we've done is taken that original graph and moved it 4 to the left. Now, as far as writing that equation in terms of g, moving left and right, is that inside the function or outside of the function? Inside of the function. So the equation for our green graph is going to have something happen inside of the function. We moved it 4 to the left. We would show that by writing x plus 4. And what we did is we wrote our new equation in terms of g because we have our old function g there. And we're just saying we're taking our function g and moving it 4 to the left. And that's what we did to draw our green graph. Our green graph has a domain that goes from -5, because domain is your x values, and includes every value from -5 all the way to 2. So we could write that -5 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 2. That would be set notation for the domain. Or you could write this in interval notation. Interval notation starts at -5, ends at 2, and since both of those values are included, you would use square brackets. So when you're asked for domain on the exam, you have a choice. You can do it in set notation or interval notation. I'll often do it in both just to remind you of both. Okay? On multiple choice questions, you have to know both because if the question is in set notation, you have to understand it. If the question's in interval notation, you have to be able to understand it. For the range of the green one, again, when figuring out these values, I always look, well, what's my smallest y value? The smallest y value as I'm moving up is 2. What's the largest y value that this graph hits? Is 5. So I could write it in set notation, or I could write it in interval notation. Before we get to B, I'm just going to write my domain and range of my original graph. And the range of my original graph. Now, does it make sense that if you move a graph left and right, that the range doesn't change? So that's what happened here. If we look at the green range and the red range, they're exactly the same. But if you move it left and right, the domain is going to change. And our domain of our new graph is 4 less. Our minimum is 4 less. And our maximum is 4 less than what we started with. Yes? Now, if we look at part B, if we're going to translate this one up, and we'll do this one in blue, just take every point and shift it up 1. Connect the dots. We would get this graph. And our domain, well, first of all, our equation in terms of g, since it's moving it up and down, that happens outside of our function, and so we'll just shift it and have to add +1 outside of our function. Our domain, since we're moving it up and down, does it make sense that our domain is exactly the same as what the domain of our red one was? But now our range is going to change, and since we moved it up 1, everything got shifted up 1 for our range. Another thing that I'm going to do after we go through an example, you are now able to do some of the practice questions. So after this example, the practice questions are at the end of the section. You can do questions 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'll always list those. It's up to you on your own time to go and do those, and make sure you come in at lunch. I have extra help every day at lunch from 12:40 till 1:10. So make sure you come in at lunch and ask questions if you had any problems from those.